Welcome to everybody online, and welcome to my distinguished fellow panelists. And we're going to have a chat in the next hour or so around the theme of the future of business in uncertainties. Well, there couldn't be a better time to discuss about that, since the exponential amount of uncertainty we had in the last couple of years, and we could say in the last 10, 15. But what is, it seems very much that uncertainties, at least in the Western world, has a negative connotation. And uncertainty, in fact, if one goes to look at it, is something that is not certain. It's something that has a probability that is lower than 100%. Or if we go and look at the history of the world, whenever there's been uncertainty, there has been innovation. Yeah, uncertainty. When you are certain about something, you're not going to try anything else. Where when you are uncertain, you're looking for options, and you're looking for different type of options. So during uncertainties is when we have the biggest wave of entrepreneurship. During uncertainty is the moment when we have the biggest amount of radical innovation. And in many respects, uncertainty goes with hardship, and hardship and uncertainty go with entrepreneurship, which are the opposite of when you are at ease. Often we like to be in a situation where we are at ease, but when we are at ease, then in many respects, ease is the enemy of progress. Yeah, and because when we are comfortable, when we are looking at things that we know already the answer, we don't look for any other answer. And most importantly, we don't question the question. So this is something that, in fact, I learned a lot from Professor Pritam Singh. I've been very fortunate of meeting him many, many years back, and he's been a role model in many respects. And I met him several times over the years. And I'm very glad that today with Manoj and with Sanjeev, we're going to talk about this. And I think that probably the first question that we should try to address is really to try to understand what uncertainty is, and what uncertainty is for Manoj and Sanjeev in their respective role and their experience. And the interesting question I think we should try to address is, has it changed? Is the role uncertainty changed? Or has it changed its nature or do we see uncertainty changing its nature? Manoj, do you want to start? What is your view?
Thank you. Thank you, Davide. First and foremost, my respect to Dr. Pritam Singh. I was his student. He first taught me in '84 in Staff College, Hyderabad. And I was a young guy of nearly 25, and he really helped me, guided me with a lot of deep insights about life, about career, about values, and I am deeply indebted to him. And I'm happy that today we are doing a memorial conference, which is very apt, and really want to thank the organizers. David, coming to your question now, the major change drivers of uncertainty are 3 or 4. Let me just share some details of that. Number one driver globally is geopolitics. The geopolitics changes so fast, and if you see last 2-3 years, it has changed very fast. I don't want to talk about politics because that is not my theme, but the change in geopolitics is leading to a lot of change in our view, change in government's view, change in the future direction. It impacts business, it impacts industry very, very deeply. And you're seeing diversity of supply chains. So many things are happening nowadays. It's all because of that. The second thing, which is also very important, and maybe the most important, is new technologies. And I believe strongly that next 10 to maybe a couple of decades, as we can see, will be led by more and more massification of technologies. Whether it is digital technology, it is renewable energy, it is EV, it is drones, robots, And of course, blockchain, AI, many technological advancements will be applied to massification, which means millions and millions of customers will feel the impact of technology. And I believe very strongly that next 10 years, the impact will be bigger than last 100 years because of massification. Till now, it was technologies were used by the top end of the market. Now it will be used by the bottom of the market also. The third aspect is aspect about consumer aspiration, consumers' expectations. Consumer of today is very impatient. He or she doesn't want to wait. He or she doesn't like static products and services. He or she wants innovation. He or she wants new things happening regularly, new products, new services, new features. And he or she is hungry for that. So consumers are driving the change also. And finally, people in our companies, employees who are the root of all this. The millennial generation, which is consisting of majority of our employees now, is very different from last generation. So their expectation in terms of how the future will be built, how strategy will be built, how companies will be run, how transparent the culture will be, how purpose-driven organization has to be, how talent has to be dealt with or nurtured, how culture needs to be open, transparent, and flexible. And finally, how leadership has to lead people through this modern times. So these are, in my view, 4 very big drivers of the so-called uncertainty. Actually, it is not uncertainty, it's just change. It's just faster change than last decade. And we as leaders have to get used to a faster change and therefore take decisions differently, be more proactive, have an ear to the ground, like Sanjeev. So how did Sanjeev end up promoting so many great startups? He had his ear to the ground of the consumers, of the technology. And if you have ear to the ground, if you can smell opportunity as a leader, you will succeed. You will fail sometimes. That's fine. Maybe some percentage of time you will fail, but that failure is also good because that gives you, that's a stepping stone for success tomorrow because it teaches you few insights. So Davide, that is what I think about it.
Do you think that its nature has changed over time?
Sorry?
Do you think that the uncertainty, the level, the nature has changed over time?
Absolutely. It's changed so much because very frankly, when I started my career, which is nearly 42 years back, there was so much stability, and you can call it stagnancy. There was so much static because everything was stable, nothing was expected to change. There were 2-3 kinds of jobs we could pick up, and there was a certain standard lifestyle. But now, the exposure is so much. The only thing I was exposed at that time was radio and cricket commentary. But today, children of 3 or 5 are exposed to thousands of things, thousands of media issues, news, media. So I'm saying that exposure is leading to the pace of change becoming far more faster.
Sanjeev, you are an entrepreneur. You've been thriving in uncertainty. It must be your better, the last thing you think about when you go to bed and the first thing at breakfast. So what's your view about it? Yeah, what is for you uncertainty? Is it good? Is it bad? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, thank you, Davide. But before I address the point you raised, first of all, thanks to the organizers for inviting me here. I've had very, very enlightening conversations. He never taught me, Dr. Pritam Singh, but I've had so many enlightening conversations with him. and on leadership, on style of leadership, on vision. Shortly after we went public, I met him and we had a chat. And he told me one thing that stuck with me. Sanjeev, in life, don't just manage the denominator. Try and increase the size of the numerator. And that's how growth happens. As a person, as a life philosophy, as a business, don't just manage the denominator, manage the size of the numerator. And that has stayed with me. There are 2-3 things that have stayed with me that he said. One of them is this, and and we talked about vision and other stuff, but this one has stayed with me. Right. Second, I want to clarify, I'm no longer the CEO of InfoEdge, so I was introduced as that. I'm actually a co-founder, I'm a vice chairman, but I don't have an executive responsibility in the business operations. I just look after the investments. Just want to clarify that in the introduction. Now, coming to uncertainty. So, look, I'm actually a coward. I'm risk averse. I don't like uncertainty. But because it's there, I have to live with it and learn to navigate it. I would much rather have a very steady life, 9-to-5 kind of job, but it doesn't happen. So I live with it. Right? Now, I'll give you an example, which is, I guess, in the front and center of everybody's mind, COVID. So we have this risk management committee. We have a business continuity planning in the company. We've been doing it for years. Now we said, okay, if there's an earthquake, this is the plan. If there's a fire, if there are floods, if there's a hacking, if there's this, if there's that. No, we went through all possibilities. And we had some sort of action plan for each of those possibilities. A war, whatever, right? We never, ever anticipated a pandemic of COVID. It came from the left field totally, right? But I tell you what worked for us and how we responded. So the first thing is, I'm on my school WhatsApp group, my college class WhatsApp group, my business school WhatsApp group. I'm on various WhatsApp groups of my friends and communities. When the first videos emerged from Wuhan, right, and they came on these WhatsApp groups, I sat up and took notice. This was around January sometime of 2020. Then it went to Milan, and then I began to pick up, hey, this could go global. It had not yet come to India, or not yet been reported coming to India. And what I did was I took one person who was in the CSR team, and I said, listen, you just don't do CSR for the next few weeks. I want you to track this disease. Internet, keep researching, throwing out information, and I want a daily report. So a daily report will be circulated. And this is how the disease progressed. This is what the media is reporting. By the time the first case had been reported in India, right, we were half prepared in our heads. That, look, this might come. We've got to figure out what to do. So when the first case was reported, we said, listen, I think we may need to move to work from home. And we began to plan and prepare. And India locked down on March 24th, 2020. We moved to work from home on March 10th. Full 2 weeks before the government announced a lockdown, we moved to work from home. And the stimulus for us to do that was, there was this well-known incident where there was a flight, an Air India flight that came from Milan or Italy or Rome to Delhi. And on that flight, there was a passenger who was subsequently detected to have that disease. And one of our colleagues' wife was a cabin crew on that flight. And she got an email that don't come to office, stay home in quarantine for 14 days. You were on the flight where this person traveled. And so this colleague of ours wrote in saying, I think I should also quarantine. And that is what, when we pressed the trigger and said, okay, start activating work from home plan, the disease is now closed. So early warning, some planning, some quick response, being alive to the to what's doable, not doable, having the ability and technology and some sort of planning to work from home, because some of this work from home stuff was we had sort of planned as a response to some of the other contingencies. that if our main building, if our main head office is damaged in an earthquake or there's a fire, how do we do work still? And work from home or remote working was a possibility we looked at. So we were able to transition fairly smoothly. And even now we are working from home. It's been almost a year and 9 months, but ours is the kind of business where you can work from home. But look, something surprised you, right? And it throws up opportunities also. So our sales team, our salespeople could do maybe 2 or 3 sales meetings a day prior to COVID. Because those were physical meetings, you travel from Noida to Gurgaon, that's an hour and a half each way, you wait half an hour in the reception, you do a meeting, you have a ritual cup of tea and coffee, you make polite small talk, then you get down to business. Right? And we discovered, and they would do 2 or 3 a day, we discovered on Zoom, on video, you could do 11, 12, 13 meetings a day. Because your clients don't want to meet you. They're also working from home. Moment you're on Zoom, there's no small talk. You get down to business straight away. It's a 20-minute meeting. And our CEO can join any sales meeting anywhere in the country, anytime. Right? So there are options also, and technology throws that up. So this is how, in a real life situation of an uncertainty, we dealt with it. But yeah, fast flexibility, environment scanning, quick action, and being slightly paranoid. If you're slightly paranoid, it helps. We could have ignored, hey, it's in Wuhan, hey, it's in Milan, it's not coming to India, it's okay. So early action helped us.
Thank you very much. And this lands very well to the next question I wanted to put to my fellow panelists, which clearly, future and uncertainty, they go hand in hand. Yeah, you just, Sanjeev just gave us a very good example on how, by imagining a little bit, fast forwarding a little bit the event of Wuhan and Milan, you were able to act in a timely manner to solve, to cope, and even to turn it into an opportunity, since many companies discovered that
actually, we did not turn it into an opportunity. It happened. And now you say, hey, we can do 12 meetings a day now. It happened. Yeah. We didn't say now it's a good thing. Yeah. It became an opportunity.
Yeah, but you turn it in the sense that you didn't fall into it. Yes. You try to look at the positive, yes. and try to look at how to change your work patterns and your processes. So many, and researcher and famous entrepreneur, they always say that the best way to deal with the future and uncertainty is to drive it. Yeah, is to be on the driving seat. You just demonstrated that, and Manoj also mentioned that before. So how do you yourself and your organization and the people you lead foresee the future? Because one thing is something is happening, so we could call that a trend. Another thing is a foresight, something that it is very embryonic. It could become very big. Yeah. So Manoj mentioned a number of technologies. He mentioned consumer behavioral change. But consumer behavioral change, they don't happen overnight. Yeah, they're starting small, and the company that they spot those changes and that they can work on it. Of course, by spotting those changes, many they will never materialize, never will have an exponential growth. We are all facing exponential growth thanks to globalization, but a lot of trends they never become mainstream. Yeah, so how do you, Manoj and Sanjeev, organize around it? How do you drive the future rather than being the recipient of it? Manoj, do you want to start with?
No, thank you, Davide. There's no magic wand here. As a CEO and the leadership team, one has to keep eyes and ears open. Be open to learning. Be open to understanding all major developments across the globe. And it is not a national issue also, it's a global issue. What are the changes? As Sanjeev said, he picked up Wuhan and Milan early. So it's just like playing cricket, picking up the ball trajectory as the ball leaves the hand of the bowler. And before it comes to your bat, you need to know which way it's going. It is swinging or spinning or what happens. Now that art, and it is really not a science, it's an art, comes to leadership teams who are open, who are very, very good in learning. They scan the world regularly. They talk about it. They brainstorm it. And from that, they pick up articulated consumer shifts, even unarticulated consumer shifts. And for example, Apple does an upgrade regularly of its software. Now, it's really not asking you and me every day what changes we need, but it does scan global consumers. And based on that, it prioritizes maybe 5, 10, 20 big changes it needs in the software of iOS, and it makes a change. And it surprises you that what you were thinking a few months back, it has come to your new software upgrade now without telling Apple. But Apple knows. Apple is in touch with consumers because the management of Apple is keeping its ear close to the ground. So I feel that managements which suffer from trained incapacity, that this is the way the business has to be run, this is the way product has to be made, this is the product or service I'll make and nothing more, nothing less, those managements will have serious problems. But those managements who are open to experiment, open to change, actually they embrace change, they fall in love with change, those managements will actually be able to be proactive. Those management will be able to, and I'm not saying they'll get everything right always. Maybe they'll get 50% right, 60% right. I don't know. It depends on case to case, industry to industry, management to management. But they will definitely have an ability to outpace competition. They will go far ahead of competition because competitors may not be doing that. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Sanjeev, what's your view about that?
I'll tell you what's worked for us. And I didn't think about it till you asked the question. Okay. And now that I think about it on the, it's people. So the truth is that, you talk about technology trends, you talk about consumer trends. So I lead the investing effort at InfoEdge. We invest in startups. Okay. The person who has been working with me heading the team or a part of the team is somebody who's been working with me for 9 years, and she is 32 years old. She's 26 years old, 26 years younger to me, right? And her team is younger to her, right? So like most new ideas that are being tried out, whether it's crypto, whether it's, gaming, whether it's whatever, right? Those are all ideas which are being used by young people. So frankly, if you ask me to invest in a gaming business, I won't be able to. I don't understand it. I don't play games myself, right? If you ask me to understand and tell you crypto, my knee-jerk reaction on crypto is, look, I studied economics in college. I graduated in 1984. I cannot imagine or comprehend a currency that does not have sovereign backing or a central bank behind it. Yet crypto is booming. So it's the young people in my team who are alive to these new things, who keep on bringing and discussing this thing and therefore changing my mind, right? And they are also empowered to take their own independent decisions. The organization is not moving in that direction because I said so. It's because they said so. So for me, young people who are in touch with these changes are the conduits of this thinking into the company.
Thank you. And you may have come across this framework that some people use, which I call it the Netflix Black Mirror theory. Yeah. So what is Black Mirror? Black Mirror is a series that it's quite fashionable, that shows a bit like Back from the Future. Is a sci-fi that shows you world that could happen. And those are, in fact, are foresights. They're not immediate future, they're very long-term future. That they carry a very, very low probability that they would happen. But what they represent, they are a beautiful representation of imagination. Yeah, because somebody that imagines something, good or bad, unfortunately, because we have plenty of examples of the unimaginable that then become reality on the negative side. But let's stay on the positive side. We stay out of politics. We stay on, and so Imagineering, it's really a skill that of course, is more probably more adept to young people because they have a very fierce and vivid imagination. But then what Sanjeev just showed us is that the young people may give us an imagination, may get us to think about something that is unthinkable till that moment. But then there is another process that is very important that we need to, is to translate it into this foresight, into an insight. And what Sanjeev has just showed us, and Manoj as well in his previous point, is that they translate it into an opportunity or a threat. Yeah, what does it really mean for me? What is it? What's the so what of this blockchain? Is it an opportunity? Is it gonna make the business better? Is it gonna make my business better? Is it gonna make me to enter a new business? Or the other side, is it a threat? Is it gonna make my cake smaller? Is it gonna make the margin on my cake smaller? And only then, you then go to the third stage, which is action. What do I do about it? Do I do something about it? Do I close my eyes to it? Or just simply say, let's wait and see? And this is something that we notice in organizations that are able to renew themselves, that they have that ability. It doesn't need to have departments or people dedicated. It's a mindset. It's a question of, let's imagine what could happen, and let's think about if it's an opportunity or a threat. And the same thing could represent both. Yeah. And then let's think about the action, which takes me to the next stage of this conversation, which is what kind of leaders are able to do that? And where do you find them? Because it's easy to say, oh, we need to, that they must be young. That's one feature or one characteristic. But where are we going to find, and where you, Sanjeev and Manoj, find leaders that they give you the confidence that they will enable your organization, your portfolio companies to renew themselves before things happen? Because when things happen, it's too late. I used to work at McKinsey many years back, and I was working in a team called Special Situation. And my boss used to tell me, Davide, when we arrive, it's surgery. Yeah. And when surgery happens, you take things out. Yeah. You never put things in. So let's always try to think as a leader how to avoid surgery. Yeah. And think it in advance, because surgery, unfortunately, most of the time, it is taking things out. Although now with the with artificial limbs and artificial art and all the kind of thing, we started to put things in, but that's the new forefront. So, dear panelists, what's your view about this? What type of leader are able to do what you described before? How do you find them? How do you train them? How do you keep them in line to be able to look at things before they come? Manoj.
Thank you, Davide. So as we said, the level of uncertainty is increasing every day. It is much more now compared to 5-10 years back. It will be much more in 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Changes will be much faster. Now, if this is happening outside the company, what happens inside the company? That is important. Now, inside the company, I believe the company is facing a talent war. It is not about a war in the market. It is a war of young, hungry, millennial talent. A company which will be able to attract and retain this talent will be able to win the war. Because the future belongs to talented young people. And if those people are able to be excited, be retained, be able to give their best, that company will win. Now, why should this talent stay? It will stay because of a great culture, high performance culture, a culture which is transparent, which is open, flexible, which listens to people, which respects people, which shows empathy to people during pandemic. That is a culture which millennial generation wants. And also millennial generation wants purpose over profits. It doesn't want to work for companies who are only working for profits. So they want to look at the purpose also, beyond profits. They also want high degree of transparency and openness in communication, rather than anything which is kept back from employees. Now, this talent needs this culture, and this culture will be built by leadership, which is very, very open and courageous leadership. I feel openness, courage are most important for the future leadership, because only then the leadership will be secure. We cannot have this kind of culture and this kind of win the talent war with a leadership which is closed and which is really not courageous. So the leadership of tomorrow has to be like that, has to not build too much structure, has to keep it spontaneous. Now, when I say in a large company, it's difficult not to have structure, but within that structure, you can still have spontaneity. Within a large structure, let's say you have 10,000 employees, 20,000 employees, you still can have informality. I think informality is at the root of the future success. You may be a very large company, but the soul of small company has to be retained by a large company. If you're a small company, then anyway you are small. You can have direct communication, you will be informal, you'll have lunch with somebody, you'll meet people informally. And keep the environment very, very positive and high performance. So this type of leadership is tough to find. And if you see last 2 years, there has been a global situation on leadership, whether it's political leadership or business leadership. And many, many leaders have been put on test. And maybe some have passed, because it's a complex situation where we need a leader who has to be secure inside himself or herself. We need a leader who's courageous, takes bold calls on strategy, and a leader who's also empathetic, who respects people, who goes close to people, who understands people's aspirations for the future. This combo is not easy, but anyone who can make this combo, and I'm not talking of one person, I'm talking of the leadership team. It could be a 5-member team, top team, 10-member team. If that team has these characteristics, then I think the company and the business will win, and win in a sustainable fashion. So that's what my thought is, David.
Thank you, Manoj. Sanjeev, what's your view?
Look, I mean, I think Manoj has said it comprehensively. And I'll just tell you how we do it, right? We try, or rather we try to do it. We don't always succeed, but we try. And what works for us, and so I think Manoj is absolutely right. When you have a large number of employees, the top management is not in direct touch or in first name basis or talking every day one-on-one to everybody in the company. So till we were 500 or 600 people in the company, I think Hitesh and I were the glue in the company. We were the personal magnets who would make people stick together, and we knew everybody by name. And if there was ever a resignation in any region of above a certain level, we would fly down and talk to that person and retain that person, right? But today, we can't do that. So obviously, it's about developing leaders at all levels in the organizations who are equally capable and effective, right? And look, we tell people that, look, it is the team leader's responsibility to ensure that the team is retained. It's not HR responsibility. It's not the CEO's responsibility. It is the team leader. If you're a team of 8 people, you have to be the glue. They want to work for you, because people work for people. They don't work for organizations. They don't work for, salary. They work for people. and they work with people, right? So I think people skills are really important down the line. So can you drive performance without being rude to people? Can you drive performance, and your people love you at the same time? Or they like you and respect you and to work with you, right? Can you create a win-win? I mean, those are crucial stuff, but it's not always easy to do. And therefore, while we try to encourage it, foster it, it doesn't work with some people, it works with many, right? But, I am in an investing role now. So we have two parts to our company. One is the operating businesses. The other is the investing part of the business. Now, what investments does is it allows us to invest in a portfolio of companies. So in the last 3 years, we invested in about 30, 35, maybe 35 startups. Now you're backing different leaders everywhere. And what they do, you learn from them. So, you may think that our startups learn from us, they do, but we also learn from them. And that's not talked about so often. So there's and so look at these entrepreneurs are young, they're smart. They do stuff which we could not imagine. And therefore we learn. So we also learn. So that's a good way of learning and to then mold your own leadership in the company that, hey, there's a sharing of good practices both ways.
Excellent. Thank you.
And for us to invest behind a startup, from our balance sheet size, you put in $1 million behind a startup, it's not that much money compared to the size of our balance sheet. And yes, if you invest behind a good startup, you get a good return. But equally importantly, you are harnessing the imagination, you're harnessing the capabilities, and you're learning from them.
So those are great insights that kind of drive me to a further question. But you, Sanjeev, just showed us that if you don't have the leadership, you go and buy it in the market by way of investing, because maybe that's the way people want to be recruited these days. Yeah. And instead of, it's another form of recruitment. And the question is, why are we so short of this type of leadership? And is there a failing in the education system? Is the education system built on certainties, and it doesn't train people, or it doesn't get people into these conditions where they can thrive into uncertainty? Because Manoj started to say there is a talent war, and there is a talent war because there is a supply problem. There is a huge demand, and there is very little, or what seems to be a short supply. So that's the first question. The second question I'd like to ask is there anything we can do in the organization to make sure that the people that they have the talent can flourish? Because often when I talk to executives, or when I work with them about, I always ask them the question: if you were coming here, if you had a time machine and you were going back 50 years, maybe in a company that has been long established, what would you see different? Then there will be different products, maybe different buildings, there will be definitely different technologies, And then I ask, and how would it look, the organization? And then blank. And say, 50 years ago, there'll still be a CEO, there'll still be a lot of C-level, there will be probably 6 or 7 levels of organizational structure. And so we changed so much in technology, consumer have changed, but in reality, in most, and this is probably true, right to left around the world, from the Western world to the Eastern part of the world, that organizations haven't changed structurally much. And so are we not, on one side, not educating people with the right skills, but on the other side, also making the talent suffocate into organization that they don't really help to manage uncertainty? So what's your view, gentlemen?
Manoj, you want to go first?
No, please go ahead.
Okay, so look, just a couple of points. Number one, in India, at least, the education system is not accountable to markets. Okay, if the education institution were accountable to markets, they would adapt and change much faster. Right? So when you join a school, you are there for 12 years by and large. People don't change schools so often. Right? if you earn a bit of a reputation as a school, there's a long waiting list for for admission. You are not accountable to markets. Likewise for good colleges, you're not accountable to markets. So, I'll give an example. In the early 80s, two companies came up, NIIT and Aptech in India. Both of them were into computer training, computer literacy. They would charge a fee to teach you how to use a computer. And they would teach you some skills. They will teach you some useful products. I mean, word processing, database, spreadsheet, all that, right? And how did these companies come up? They came up because the education system did not respond and add these to their curriculum until much later, much later, right? And these are listed companies with market caps. Now, okay, just one illustration. So if you're not accountable to markets, you don't respond, number one. Number two is the fact is that the work we do very often in our workplace is totally divorced from the education we got in school and college, very often, right? And I'm not sure how that is in the West, but it's possible that the West may be slightly ahead on this, but I don't think it will be that far ahead.
You're absolutely right.
Right? So you're right, the education system is like that. If I look back,
by and large, quite disconnected. It doesn't, what I always notice when I come to teach in India and in the Western world, you're probably right that there is, it's closer to the market. But what is the biggest difference is that we lost the teaching of values. Yeah, where I really still think that there are universal principles. And when I come and I see at your distinguished colleges, that is still very strong.
I agree.
And teaching how the mind works, it's something that hasn't changed very much. Where the markets, and by teaching how the mind works and the values and the principles, then you can adapt them to the different contexts. So, there are good and bads on both sides. But
I agree.
The problem is that, it's a fact. If we are short of something, it's because there is no supply. And if the people that are deemed to supply the talent, they are not doing it, there is a problem. Then we can say where it is and we can debate what it is.
The other point is, look, wherever there's explosive growth happening, there will be a shortage of talent, right? So let's take a look at the industry Manoj was in for several decades, the mobile telephony, the telecom, private sector telephony, right? When that industry was founded and born, due to availability of technology and government regulation allowing it to be deployed in the mid-90s, early 90s, there was no private sector telephone company in India, right, offering telecom services. Now, where would they get that talent from? I'm sure they got some technical talent from public sector because that was a monopoly, but I'm sure a lot of the managerial talent came from industries that were not even adjacent, but they were into some sort of sales roles, they were into finance roles. So this talent came from outside, right? Now, today, with telecom being a mature industry, I'm pretty sure a lot of the talent comes from within the industry. I don't know, Manoj will tell us. But, but as explosive growth happens, you are always going to be short of talent. Because it takes a few years for people to get the experience to say, okay, I can now recruit from within the industry because now the industry has got enough talent. Let's take a look at the industry I am in, the internet industry. We launched in 1997. There were only 14,000 internet accounts in the country then. There was zero experience in the environment for anybody in the industry. We were one of the pioneers. So we had to create our own thing and give people experience. In the early 2000s, after we raised venture capital, the only tech people in India were people who worked in services. Infosys, TCS, Wipro. There were no product companies in India. Right? So we got from there. We got freshers. We trained them from college. Right? It's only in the mid 2000s, 2005 or 6, there was enough talent in the internet industry where we could say, okay, we can hire from other companies which are in the same industry. Right? So as industries mature, they create the pools of talent. And that is something we have to, I think, accept and live with. That, fledgling new industry, explosive growth, there will be shortage of talent. There will be. The tragedy is that your entry-level supply is not of great quality, not enough of it. So you have to train people on your own. Once they get experience, they'll become very good.
Thank you. Manoj.
Thank you, Davide, and I think what Sanjeev said was very insightful. My view is a bit different. I believe that India has fantastic talent. And in the last few years, I think talent of India has been touched for the first time. Because the institutions, educational institutions, have a very limited capacity in India, very limited capacity. But that doesn't mean that the talent is limited. The small and medium towns of India, and during my telecom days, I must have visited thousands of towns and lakhs of villages. They have fantastic talent. Now, when I say talent, what do I mean? I mean they have deep values. Values of honesty, values of hard work, values of humility, which came from their parents. And they also have immense hunger to succeed, hunger to win, which means, in my view, they have the right attitude. And in my view, and I'm sorry to say, attitude wins over MBAs and degrees. If you have the positive, flexible attitude, you can win over any degree. So for us to say that only guys with degrees are talented is not right. I think there's so much talent. And I can bet, in the next 10 years, you will see so much talent emerging from India. And that majority of that from small towns and villages. Because that talent is underprivileged today. And I personally visit and I have seen small children, 10 years, 15 years, saying that I want to become a software engineer, I want to become a programmer, I want to do coding, I want to all that. Very few countries in the world will have this kind of hunger. So not only the guys who are coming up will be very hardworking, and that they're showing that across the world. I mean, look at two leaders from India who have risen to the top, Satya and Sundar. Very humble, but very, very talented. And leading two companies which are $2 trillion each in value terms. I think there are so many Satyas and Sundars in this country who will come up, you will see in the next 10 years, because now the opportunity is knocking on the door. Earlier, the entrepreneurial opportunities were not there. The capital was not there. Technology was not there. Government was not helping. Now everything is helping step by step. So I feel that even if educational institutions have low capacity, parents have great capacity. Parents teach good values and good attitude. Now coming to companies. Companies also have a problem. They don't nurture talent very well, except for few companies. And let me give an example of Unilever. Unilever has tons of talent, which goes all over the industry. It goes all over the country. And what Sanjeev said, when I was in Airtel, I picked up a lot of talent from Unilever, including the present CEO of Airtel. Fantastic guy, fantastic talent. And not only Unilever, we picked up great talent from Nestle, from Britannia, from Coke, from Pepsi, many, many FMCG companies. But there are not many companies like that who nurture, who have a culture of nurturing, who have a culture of listening to employees, understanding their aspirations, giving them challenges, giving them opportunity to grow. For example, my boss, when I was 8, 9 years old in the company, I was in HR function. I was HR manager. So he told me, he said, why don't you take up a business job, a business role? I think you can do business. So he threw me a challenge. I picked up the challenge. I ran with the challenge. But how many bosses do this? How many companies give this challenge? So that is another leadership challenge, to make a nurturing culture where you nurture talent, give them chances, give them opportunities. Even if they fail, give them another opportunity. Give them resources. I think there is no shortage of talent. Talent will come. It is we who will pick it up, we who will encourage it, and we who will guide it and coach them. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. And you both touched very strongly on the talent, on the supply, and on the nurturing. Now, once talent is in the company, are organizations nowadays organized in a way to make the best out of it? Or are we still using archetypes and architecture of organizations that actually could stop and hinder the talents of younger or more senior? What's your view about it? The example I made before is that I don't know about India, but if it hasn't changed very much in the last 3 years since my last visit, it is similar to the Western world, where organizations are still pretty much organized as they were 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, where their products, their customers, they have changed enormously. The organization, they haven't. And we start to see, and a number of experiments. I mean, there are companies like Gore Associates that have been around for 70 years, and they have a very, very flat organization, decentralized. But of course, Sanjeev, you mentioned before crypto. With the crypto, there is now new emerging decentralization. And of course, the COVID, having people working from home, has made that possible. But it seems that it potentially, it's an hygiene factor. It's something that is stopping leaders, younger leaders, talents to flourish. So what's your view about it? What can we do about it? What kind of organization did you experience help the companies to be able to manage the future, to manage uncertainty, and to make, nourish and nurture young talent? What's your view?
My view is very simple. Companies in competitive markets, and almost all markets are competitive today, are accountable to markets. And if talent is central to your success, which in most industries, most companies it is, right? If you don't manage and treat your talent in the right manner, right, you will lose talent. You will leak talent. And if you do, you will be forced to respond and change your methods, right? And some of it may not be overnight. So I'll tell you, I was working in a multinational consumer company in the late 80s, early 90s. And there was one kind of hierarchy, one kind of decision-making style, one kind of centralization then, a very low levels of empowerment down the line. And that's one of the reasons I left and became an entrepreneur. I was called back to give a talk to the marketing team 20 years later, maybe 25 years later. Obviously, all different people now, right? And I found a very different culture. I found substantially higher levels of empowerment down to the managerial level, which I had left. So companies do evolve, people do change, but some of it is evolutionary, not revolutionary. It may take 5, 7, 10 years. It may take one big leader to come and say, hey, this has to change. But organizations do change. They do respond to markets. They do respond to competition. And if you're leaking talent, somebody senior in the company will take notice and fix things, in my view. In any good company, that's what will happen.
What's your view about the organizational structures? And have you experienced some innovation around that? Manoj, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, organization structure has to be very, very dynamic and futuristic. And unfortunately, majority of the companies, the very few companies do this, majority of the companies stick to a structure for years and years, maybe decades, as if that is the end of the world. Structure has to be, design of an organization has to be based on external environment, on the consumer, on the industry evolution, on technology. It cannot be static. So I'm seeing many companies being static. And I remember in Airtel, we used to change structure regularly. And people used to come to me and say, why are you changing it? Why are you making it so dynamic? I said, because the consumer is dynamic. Consumer is not static. The external world is dynamic. Hence, I need to change myself to face the external world, to face competition and win it. So I think that perception of structure is too wrong. Sorry to say this. I mean, it is too structured. It has to be spontaneous. It has to be.
If you want to, when you were saying that, you kind of enlightened me into the sense that we are dealing, or today we're talking about uncertainty. An organizational structure gives certainty. Yeah. So you want to know who you're responding to. You want to know about, because it seems that it's universally accepted. But the reality is that the consumer change, technology change, everything changes.
The certainty should be of my contribution to my business, of my contribution to the growth of the company. That is the certainty we need as employees. We don't need certainty of a job or a structure, because that is backward. That is yesterday. My certainty is that I have skills and capabilities to contribute very well to the growth of the business and profitability of the business and to my consumers. If I do that, I can do X role, Y role, whichever role management thinks is good for me. So I'm talking like an employee. So I think we have to look at the new generation. New generation doesn't think like that. And a new generation is not worried about structural changes. They're not worried about modern designs of organization. They're not worried about that only 50-60% of your job is defined and balance is undefined. Now that may look very bad in the past, but that undefined job is the job you have to define for yourself for future. So employee is empowered to define his own job or some percentage of his job. So I think the modern era organization has to be far more flexible, far more open, far more changing, and less control, less structure. And you will see productivity levels be far greater. Culture will be far better for retention of young talent.
I'd like to add something. I think COVID and work from home and remote working has been a surgical shift in exactly what Manoj is saying, that you no longer have line of sight of so many of your employees or your colleagues or your teams. So you automatically have to trust them, empower them, talk to them twice a day, and just evaluate outputs and outcomes and not micromanage. So organization culture is therefore, I think COVID has changed the organization culture. Now look at it this way. We now believe it is safe for us to reopen the office with some COVID protocols. That's it. However, we realize that most people don't want to come back. We're happy working from home. We've got to deal with it. So then, and we are trying to figure out how to do it. But if you're working largely remote, your culture has already changed. You didn't do it. It was done to you, but it's happened.
And let me tell you a story that is quite interesting. That happened to me. I'm teaching a case about Gore since maybe 15 years. And I always, I come from a generation where I really didn't like hierarchy, and I didn't like to have too many people to respond because I wanted to have latitude. Yeah. And we talked through the case, and I always ask the question, would you work for this company where basically everybody's an associate and you become a leader if people show up when you call up a meeting? So there is no real appointed boss. And then we discuss it, and some people like it, some people like it less. And then I ask the question, I call it the LinkedIn syndrome. I say, how many of you could work in an organization that for the next 10 years will not allow you to change your job title? and then blank. 95% of my classes would say, oh, no, it cannot be. And I say, why? You know, in this company, every year you have new project, you have more latitude, you will have more budget to, but still, you will still be called an associate. Oh no, but you know, and I call it the LinkedIn syndrome. On one way, it is true that the younger generation, they want more latitude and more responsibility, but on the other hand, there is a contradiction in terms because they want to show to the world that they are progressing. And the way we educated them that progress is manifested is through job title change. And so it is very, you know, and there is no solution to it. You know, the case ends up at just saying, look, guys, you told me you want more freedom, you want more.
No, I agree with you, Davide. I mean, you know, people want an illusion of progress. They want a peg to hang their progress on. So if my job title, so one is salary, other is job title. Third is how many people are reporting to me. So what's the size of my empire? You know, what car am I driving today versus yesterday? Which neighborhood was my house in yesterday? Where is it today? And so job title is number one important proxy.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's human psychology.
On Zoom, there will be no people with a corner office. Are we going to have it on Zoom?
No, I'm sure Zoom will find a way. They'll give the bosses a gold frame, a silver frame, a bronze frame, no frame. We can find ways. Human beings don't change.
Can I just jump in? Davide, a couple of questions you may like to just raise because
yes, I was saying so
yeah, thanks.
There is one about I think it is for Sanjeev. You talk about the fact that leaders should be young. So one of the audience is asking, is it young chronologically or young at heart?
You know, young. I mean, it's a nice slogan, young at heart. It's about being in touch and being immersed in that reality, right? And I may say I'm young at heart, but am I in touch with that reality? Do I live that reality? If my customer is 18 years old and I'm 58, it's going to be hard for me to be in touch with that reality. I've got to understand that. Look, I think there are people in India who grew up with a mobile phone, who were born after 1995, right? If you're born at 1995, you're 26 years old, right? You're an adult. So you did not know. I grew up in an environment where it was an 8-year waiting list to get a landline, right? There are people in India who are now 20 who were born into the internet era. They have been using it since they can remember, right? There's stuff that I don't know. Then when there's stuff that I don't know, you should be willing to get in younger people who are immersed in that reality. And they will usually be chronologically younger, usually. Not always, but usually be chronologically younger. I mean, I'm willing to bet, you know, Manoj does not know how to use Instagram the way his kids do. I certainly don't. I have just about got an Instagram account. And I got it to track my kids. What are they posting on Instagram? Because my son would not tell me where he's going, but he would post on Instagram, hey, I'm at this restaurant and here's the photo. So I'd be able to say, okay, he's at the restaurant. Okay.
There is a further clarification question that says, is Mr. Ratan Tata young or not?
I'm sure he is. I'm sure he is. But question is, does he use Instagram?
That's a very fair point. That's a very fair point.
If he does,
apparently,
if he does and elected it, I hats off to him.
Yeah. So apparently somebody from the audience says is a very active user of Instagram.
Okay.
I'm not a follower of him, so I cannot confirm.
Fantastic. So he's a better man than I am.
Good. So
Manoj, do you use Instagram?
Yes, I do. And Sanjeev, I believe that I've always favored young people in my life, and because I believe that Alexander died at 33 after conquering the world. So if you don't give responsibilities and important roles to young people, then we're missing it. So I've always given very important responsibilities to guys who are 27, 28, 5-6 years experience. I think they're so good. They're so good. And a senior responsibility is by the time you're 30, 32. Now, the point is, what about older talent? Now, older talent who always tries to keep themselves relevant with new technologies, learning a lot regularly, and also unlearning the old stuff. I think that older talent is actually quite young. So I think I'll be happy to always give them more responsibilities, etc. Because attitude is young. The age may not be young, but attitude is young, which is also excellent. So that is what I think about this.
We are now driving.
Davide, I have to add one thing there.
Sure.
I have 3 or 4 acid tests, okay, of how young you actually are. Right. One is how adept are you at Instagram? 2 is how much when TikTok was allowed in India, were you actually creating and posting content on TikTok? Right? Did you play PUBG when PUBG was allowed in India? And do you own a team on Dream 11? If you do these 4 things, no matter how old you are young at heart.
Very good. So we are driving to a close, and so I would love to ask to my 2 fellow panelists, what would be the 3 things you want the audience to retain about today? What are the 3 things that you would like the people to have in their mind to retain about how to manage uncertainty by imagining the future far ahead of when it comes? Manoj or Sanjeev, do you want to start? Anyone? What are the 3 things that you would like the audience to retain of your many insights you shared today?
I think environment scanning, is a really important thing, which means you should constantly read, you should constantly observe, should constantly be in touch, especially with your customers or prospective customers, right? And they will educate you, and that process will educate you, right? And if you do that, I think every other sort of thing will fall in place. We have always learned from our customers and prospective customers. I have learned from my young employees. I have learned from my investee companies. I have learned by reading.
Manoj, what would be the thing that you want the audience to retain of today?
No, I feel that there are many good points which Sanjeev raised or I may have raised, but I think the top 3 could be, winning the talent war. I think talent is most important to modernize the company, modernize the business, make it future-proof, etc., etc. Second, building a culture which is open for people to be nurtured, to build their capabilities. As you said, companies need to nurture them. And finally, leadership, which needs to build the right kind of strategy for future, which is secure leadership which is courageous, leadership which is open and transparent.
I'd like to thank Mr. Manoj and Mr. Sanjeev for their incredibly insightful sharing. We also need to thank a number of sponsors that have helped us to make this happen, and in particular Indian Oil and ONG, and then the supporting business schools. And then, of course, thank the organization and for putting in place all these events. And of course, remind ourselves that this event is in honor of Professor Pritam Singh. And there are a number of publications out of him, and in particular, one around the role of boards and to build a sustainable competitive edge, which I would recommend for some of you to look at, because it is a wealth of great information. Now, what do I retain out of this incredible hour and 15 minutes is that the future is going to always be there. And the future, by definition, carries uncertainty because futures can take different directions. And what I learned from my distinguished colleagues is that foresight, in order to have foresight, you need to have great leaders. And to have great leaders, you need to be able to find them. maybe in more unexpected places like smaller towns where people have still hunger and they are, they have those principal values that this principal leadership that really help. But one thing I learned from my father actually was that if I have to fall, which is always the case when you're dealing with uncertainty, try to fall forward rather than backwards. Because when you fall forward, you can see what you're falling into. When you fall backwards, you don't know what you're falling into. So although many times, and Sanjeev at the beginning said, I'm a risk adverse, I like certainty. So he probably likes to fall forward because following backwards is more risky than following forward. So, and Manoj, with all this incredible career and many businesses that he manages through Softbank, showed us that, we are not paid to manage the expected, we are paid to manage the unexpected. And the unexpected comes and can only be managed by leaders that are curious, by organizations that are flexible, that are open, because the unexpected, if it's expected, is not unexpected. And if it's unexpected, it means you need to be curious, open, and flexible to accommodate it. So without further ado, I like just a big virtual round of applause for our panelists and for the organization. And I wish you all a great continuation in the conference. And I thank again Sanjeev and Manoj. It has been an immense pleasure for me and delight to meeting you and working with you in this panel.